talking about haptics is we're going to give you live demos that you can experience for yourself. So after Suzanne's done collecting business cards, we're going to be passing out some devices for you to feel, because haptics is about touch. And just like you need to be able to see to understand colors, you need to be able to hear to understand sound, you need to touch to be able to understand what haptics is about. So we're going to have some tablets being passed around, some handsets with demos on there, so you can see what our tool set does for you. Okay, so while Suzanne's going around, let's get started here with what I'm going to be talking about. We're going to do a little short introduction to haptics. We're going to talk about some examples using haptics. We'll get into the developer tools that Immersion has specifically for the Android platform and what it's composed of, as well as bundling opportunities. This is what we're talking about for preload deals with the OEM partners that we have, or carriers. And then we're going to talk a little bit about going beyond the common use of haptics or vibration feedback in the gaming experience for other applications that you may not have thought of, but that are possible. Then we'll open it up for a little bit of Q&A. So when I'm talking about the tool set, I'm going to be talking about the studio use as well as programming. So I don't know how many of you out there are actual programmers, but we'll get into using a little bit of Eclipse. I'm not going to get into Eclipse itself, but I'm going to show out the primary methods that we use for adding the haptic calls into your Android projects. So what is haptics? Maybe you've seen some of these devices before: force feedback joysticks, racing wheels, rumble pads. That is what we consider force feedback. That is haptics. That's where Immersion got their start 18 years ago. Our partners are Microsoft, Sony, Logitech in that gaming space. And now we've brought that technology, that same sort of control for the vibration commands, to the mobile platform. So why use haptics or force feedback in your Android device? Well, the sense of touch is very engaging. It's very personal. There's a sense of satisfaction when you run your fingers over a tactile surface. If you think about the sensation of silk versus corduroy, the fabric texture, there is a compelling feeling there. For confirmations on these flat surfaces, we have more and more devices like this, these slates and tablets, that have no real buttons on them. They're all virtual buttons. So they've taken away the feeling, that tactile feeling, of the buttons that you normally have on a keyboard. So the user satisfaction, just the general kind of feeling of what we expect, is lost on these devices without using haptics. There's also the emotional connection. You think about sending a poke through Facebook or sending a smiley face on a message. Well, that's great to read, but if I can feel that, if I can experience, say, I love you, and then you feel a heartbeat with that, with your phone, that's haptics, and that's an emotional response that you can give through an additional communication pathway of vibration. And it's also a competitive advantage specifically for the Android market, because the iOS developers, they don't have any control over vibration. Apple has locked that out. So all the games on the Android market, they can have the capability of force feedback that you get in the gaming space, but you don't get that on the iOS. So all the OEMs that are making Android devices, they see this as a competitive advantage against their competitor, Apple. So the number one reason for developers is I can make more money on this. If I have some compelling haptic apps, make use of vibration, these OEMs that are competing against Apple, they're going to want to have haptic applications to differentiate from what Apple doesn't have. And we'll talk more about bundling opportunities and working with the partners later on in this. So let's talk a little bit about the mode of development platform and what it is. These are some examples. You see a shooter application here. This is an application called Deadly Chambers by Battery Powered Games. It's on the Android market. It's a shooter game. And in that game, you have many, many different types of weapons. You've got pistols, machine guns, you even have pulse rifles. And each one of these feels different, just like it would in your console gaming space experience. There's a pinball game there. Now, all the pinball games on the iOS, they look really nice. They play really well. Well, they do on the Android platform too, but on the Android platform, I can feel the ball bouncing around. And it's not just buzzing all over the place. You get bumps and clicks and bounces. Very subtle control over the motor on the Android platform. There's a guitar application there. That guitar application is called Solo on the Android market. You can download that one too. And you can feel the strings on that guitar. Now you could, with a standard Android SDK, have some vibration control, but not like what you get with a Motive SDK, and I'll tell you why. So the Motive SDK is different from what Google Vibrate motor command is, because Google allows you to turn the motor on or off at 100% motor voltage, so it's strong. So that's great for buzzing and clicking, ticking effects, but it's no good for gaming. It's no good for subtlety, because I'm always running the motor at 100% voltage. So we allow you to change the motor voltage, change the pulsing, and even the frequency of that pulsing. We also have a library of pre-made effects. If you are a programmer for Android, you know the only thing that you do for programming is you've got to set a duration of motor on and motor off. And that's for your target device. So that's all the control that you have. We give you a library of pre-made vibe effects, and that is part of an application here that I can show you. Where did I lose here? Blank. Okay, so I'm going to show you this. So here, this is the UHL effect preview application. It's got 124 pre-made effects for developers to use, and we'll talk a little bit more about that one. It saves you time because you can use pre-made effects. You don't have to design your own. You don't have to set the parameters for on and off. You just choose an effect and trigger it from within your application, whether it's a gaming application or anything else. And it allows you consistent feedback. And by consistent, I mean this handset and this tablet, they have different motors inside of them. You've got a very large device like this, or you've got your handset here. It could be from LG, Samsung, HTC, Motorola. They all have different motors inside. And as a developer, I don't have every device out there. I've got what I'm developing on right here. Within our library of effects, it's actually 5 libraries of effects to compensate for the differences in motors between all the Android devices out on the market. So if you program using the pre-designed effects or our studio tool, anything you make, you only have to design once. And it'll feel consistent on tablets or handsets from any manufacturer on all the Android devices. And that's a very big point there. So the benefits of the SDK, like I said, for the Google Vibrate command, you have to define motor on, motor off times. So if I want to, with a Google framework, have something that feels consistent on many different devices, I have to take each one of those devices, design my effects, say for a button click, to feel good on this device, and say for a rotating spinning mass motor, I need a time, on-off time of 75 milliseconds. But for this linear resonant actuator that's on this other device, it would feel better at 25 milliseconds. Well, I'd have to have 2 sets of effects being called dependent on the device type that I have. We abstract all that out for you. For our universal haptic layer, this is this abstraction layer that makes it consistent across all the Android devices. We have in our SDK a jar file. We've got documentation and a .so file that's an emulator. And what that's for is Immersion is not a partner with every OEM out there. So we have Samsung, we have Nokia, we have LG, we have Toshiba, Fujitsu, many of them, but we don't have HTC, we don't have Motorola. What do we do for those devices? We do the best we can with emulator software to control that motor in the very same way. So if it's one of our partners' devices, it's going to feel fantastic. But we also have a library in there for our non-partner devices, because as a developer, the toolkit has to work across all the devices out there. We also have a quick start guide, and I'm going to go through some of these steps that we have in Eclipse for adding the effects from the pre-made library into your application. This quick start guide shows you what you need to do to set up your Eclipse project. And it also has links in there for many of these demos that I've shown, our form online, the preview application, everything that you would need to get started in adding effects into your project. Now, I go to hackathons, I go to a lot of events with programmers, and lots of times I'll challenge them at the beginning of the talk. I'll just throw up this little link for them to go ahead, this code to go download our tools, and I say, if you're programming right now, you've got Eclipse open, take our toolkit, try to add some effects into your project before I get done talking. And within half hour to 40 minutes, I usually have at least one programmer come up to me and say, I did it, what do I get? You know, so. We also have the Quick Start Guide. If you can go online to get this, so you see the little QR code there. But in the back, we have copies of it if you want to take one home with you. So within that guide, you're going to find how to set up your Eclipse project. It shows you're just going to extract the zip file that we have somewhere on your laptop. You're going to go ahead and put that in your Eclipse project, specifically in your libs, arms, EABI folder. If you don't have that, you're going to want to set that up. And then you're going to want to refresh the project so that you can see the .so file within that folder. You're going to want to navigate to your build path, and you want to click on external jar files, and you want to browse to the UHL jar file. And very important here, this last point, in the Permissions tab for the Android Manifest XML, you want to add the permission for Vibrate. Otherwise, your project's not going to use any of the Vibrate commands. So within Eclipse, you have an import statement. You're going to use a launcher class here. So the next step is to add a launcher member. And from that, we're going to instantiate that launcher class. At this point, you want to go over to your preview application. You want to download that UHL preview app. And you want to feel the effects that are in here and pick the type of sensation that you want for that part of your project. So say it's a machine gun firing. Okay, I go find the machine gun effect here. All right, I see what that's called. It's got the code showing me here exactly what I'm going to put in. I'm going to reference that now, and I'm going to be putting it into my project here. But the beauty of this is that I can rapidly find a feeling, a sensation for something in my project here without having to code anything in to my project to recompile. So it's rapid prototyping of the sensations for your application very easily using the preview application. So after I've done that, I've found the effects that I want, and here I'm showing that you can go ahead and download it on the Android Marketplace. And this is also in the Quick Start Guide for downloading. You've got the sample code within the preview app. It's going to feel great in all our partners' handsets and tablets, and it's going to feel, with the emulator class, also feel good on our non-partners' devices. So within that preview app, you have scrolling effects. You have touch effects just for clicks and buttons, scrolling effects as well. If you have any kind of alarms or alerts that you want to use for your application, say you're making a caller ID app, like one of our developers did, I can show you that in a moment. Or if you want an alert within a game, say it's a spaceship game and you've got some alien ship coming up behind you and you want to have an alert for that, you can select that from within the preview file. For animations, transitional effects, think about menus that are sliding backwards or forth or up or down. You could have a transition at a very low level. You could feel the vibration very subtly come across as the page is turning. Think an e-reader application as you're turning the page. A confirmation that there is a transition happening, and maybe at the end of that transition, call a little click effect so that you know the transition is over. You can have gaming effects, like I said, weapon effects for firing or explosions or motors. So say you're in a racing game and you want to feel the acceleration of your vehicle. That's in here as well. And texture effects. And by texture effects, it's vibration. So we're not changing the characteristics of the screen at all. But there are different levels of magnitudes and pulsing that you can give to the screen so that as you're, say you have a pen drawing application or a painting application where I've got an airbrush that I'm feeling, it can feel different with an airbrush than it can if I'm drawing with a pen. So you can apply these virtual textures to your applications. That's part of the preview app as well. So after I've decided what I want in the preview app, it's a simple play effect command with a launcher class. Here we're showing a bounce effect. So this might be something where you're scrolling through a list, you get to the bottom of a list, and it hits the bottom, and you play the bounce effect. Or this could be a ball bouncing in a game. Anything you want. And after you play the effect, you're going to call stop effect. And another important point here, you see catch runtime exception. You want to make sure to do that to make sure that everything plays perfectly and there are no exceptions happening on the vibration commands. And that's really it for adding the code to your project for calling effects. You just repeat that for every spot that you're going to be calling any effects from the UHL. So if you want more than what are in the pre-made library, we also have a studio tool for authoring your own effects. And beyond that, we have a full API level so that if you want to dynamically control the parameters, the voltage going to the motor, or the pulsing parameters to change the width of the pulses, you can do that as well with a full API. So I want to switch over to the Studio Design tool real quick, and those of you that know audio will see that this is similar to an audio tool. And what I'm bringing up now, and it's very hard to see, but I'll get into some of the editing screens so you can see better. This is one of the libraries from the UHL effect set. So there are many different effects here that are part of the library. And if I go in, let's say, to slow pulsing. So I just opened up a timeline. It has 3 pulse effects here. And you can see that they ramp up and come down. They ramp up, they come down. You've got 3 pulses there for that specific effect. If I go into the effect itself, here's the editing screen for making that effect. There are a lot of handlebars, so you can pull things around. I can change the magnitude this way. I can change the enveloping of it any way I want. And any kind of changes that I make here are going to change in the timeline itself. And when I have my device hooked up to this and I press the play button, I feel the effects immediately in my tethered device. So you can rapidly feel what you're designing this way before you export the Java code to put in your project. You can also add in sounds that go into this so that you can line up the timing for sounds that you have in your application. Now, you won't use the synchronizing of the sounds within here in your export code. You still have to play back the sounds and time them together within your application. But as a design tool, we allow you the capability to bring the sounds in to get the timing right for the sensations. We use this a lot with the OEMs for when they want ringtones that are synced up with vibration. They can go in here and for each note, whether it's MIDI, wave, whatever, set it up and export a whole track of vibration that's in sync with their ringtone. You see this a lot more in the Asian market than you do here in the US. I don't know, they seem to be way ahead of us there. So after you get done, you have the option here to export in many different formats, but what we'd be interested is in the Java code. All right? So that's the studio portion of it. And that allows you to go beyond the 124 pre-made effects that are in the studio, within the preview application. What you need to use for that is the SDK. So you go ahead and download that from our website. And then you need the bridge application that helps you connect your device to the studio tool. Now, beyond that, I talked about dynamic vibration control through the API. So say you've got a racing game, and you want to accelerate in your racing game and change the motor voltage so it goes from low vibration to high vibration based on your speed. You can use the full API control for that. That's part of the SDK too. So for downloading the platform tools, we've got immersion.com/motive-SDK. That's the main link for the tools. And for the quick start guide, you can pick them up in the back door there or get them from our website as well. The tools are free. I haven't said that yet, but they are absolutely free. We make our money on the hardware side through our OEM partners. Okay, we have some plugins for AppMobi development platform, and Unity 3D will be coming up in February. So I encourage you, if you have any kind of Unity 3D apps for iOS, if you have iOS apps and you want to port over to Android, talk to us for the plugin for Unity 3D to convert those over with haptics for the Android market. Now we have a Motivate Your Apps campaign going on where we're taking all of our developers' apps and we're trying to pitch them back to the OEMs because they want the haptic content for their devices. They want them in their app stores, they want to do preload bundle deals, and they're looking for this content because they already have the technology built into their devices, and they're looking for that competitive advantage against the iPads and the iPhones out there. So in order to get into this campaign, you just need to use the SDK that we have, launch it on the Android market, say that it's integrated with the immersion mode of haptic effects and let us know about it, and you'll be a part of this campaign. We can put you into our catalog when we go to meetings with Samsung, LG, Toshiba, and all our partners. Now beyond that, let's talk about the promotion that we do. Any kind of marketing that we're going to be doing for our developer program, you would be a part of then. But before I finish, I want to talk a little bit about going beyond games. Social networking. We talked about that, where if you want to send a heartbeat or a poke, you can now have a haptic element to that. Think about screen gestures, the side swipes that I was talking about, where you can feel those transitional effects. Think about two-way videos, where you could have a video touch your screen and have the user on the other side feel that interaction. Or think about the e-readers, as I said, page turning, or content within there. You say, it's starting to read, and you feel your device, little raindrops, virtual raindrops on your device. That hasn't been done yet. It's totally possible. Or think about Navicues for the sight impaired. They want to go down and find a Starbucks, and they have to listen to cues. What if they could put the phone in their pocket after putting in the target location, and they get to the corner, and it's a tap, tap, tap for left, and a buzz for right? I would want that. I can see. But instead of holding my device in front of my face and walking to find a Starbucks, I can now put my device, my handset, in my pocket and walk there like I'm a native, like I've always lived in Las Vegas, right? So it's things like that that are possible through this haptic channel that aren't on the market just yet. I'm going to stop here with a couple of videos to give you a little bit more of an idea of what this could be like. Let me turn on the sound for you. So what you get there is you can feel that knocking, right? This is a little video clip, but it could just as well be two-way video where I'm experiencing that. This is an interactive clip where there are two different people in two different rooms. One person is drawing on their device. The other person can draw as well. And when they interact, their paths, they can both feel that they're touching. That's possible with haptics, like you're in the same room together. Last one here is a pinball application, but it's an interactive pinball application. So as the ball goes off the screen onto the other person's device, the first person can still feel what's going on the other person's device. So it gives a real connection of gameplay that's going on. So it's not just me feeling the game on my side, but what's going on the other side as well. So again, we've got Zap Your App campaign that we're doing. So if you want to add motive haptic effects for potential more money with our hardware partners, please download the SDK. We're there to help with the process. The tools are free. Obviously, the more apps that are out there, the more hardware we feel of our partners is going to sell, and that's the idea that they have too. That's why they want us to bring them apps. We're going to have the raffle here in just a second, but I want to take some questions, if anybody has any questions. Okay, raising the hand for the card or the question? I'll take the question. So this is all very specific to Android. So if you're working in the Android environments, it should play. If this is something where we need a plugin specifically for Adobe Air within Android, we should talk about that. Anybody else with a question here? Usage or the tools themselves? Yes? Sure. You can, yes. You can combine them. You can take a sound bit, right, and do a timeline like I was showing the 3 pulses there, and you can line it up any way you want. So we generally do that with the larger partners out there, the gaming partners, and which we did earlier in the gaming space for consoles and PC games. But yes, you can absolutely define it for the sound itself. Anybody else? Yeah? Okay, let's see who's gotten the certificate here. New Markets, Dan Goldstein. Come on up. Thank you guys very much.